welcome to IP Study Video Lectures. Today we will discuss the third chapter of Grade 6 English Grammar, and we're going to explore something that we use every single day. Can you guess what it is? Yes, we are talking about questions or interrogative sentences. An interrogative sentence is a sentence that asks question. You use these sentences when you want more information. They always end with a question mark. You can use them to ask questions like, where do you live? What is your name? Are you coming to the party? These are all examples of interrogative sentences. Before the end of this lesson, you will be able to identify types of questions, explain yes-no questions and WH-WH questions, and develop questions using both yes-no questions and WH questions. Before we dive further, let us study this example. Have you closed the door? No. Now this type of a question, they simply need an answer with a yes or no. Let us study some more examples. Do you enjoy swimming? How often do you swim? Now what did you observe? We can answer the first question with a simple yes or no, but we cannot answer the second question by a simple yes or no, because the second question needs more information. These are the two types of questions, yes and no questions, and WH, that means WH questions. Yes or no questions are simple, which can be answered by only yes or no. For example, has he completed his homework? Yes. WH questions or WH questions are those which begin with who, which, what, whom, whose, when, where, how, or why. For example, what are you reading? Now this needs more information. I am reading a novel. So all of these questions are WH questions. What is your name? Where is your house? Whose book is this? All of these are WH or WH questions. Yes-no questions begin with an auxiliary verb. The auxiliary verb is placed before the subject. For example, let us see this sentence. He is reading. Now, when you want to convert this into a question, you simply put an auxiliary verb before the subject. For example, is he reading? Raghav has left. Now, you will put the auxiliary verb before the subject. Has Raghav left? Risha can sing. Can Risha sing? He must do it. Must he do it? The auxiliary verb, that means to be verbs such as am, is, was, etc., they always come before the subject in questions. When there are two or more auxiliary verbs, the first one comes before the subject. For example, she has been cooking dinner. Now, there are two auxiliary verbs, has and been. Now, when we will convert this sentence into a question, we will put the first auxiliary verb before the subject. Has she been cooking dinner? Has she been cooking dinner? This is the correct question. In the simple present tense and simple past tenses, we use do, does, did. For example, he drinks milk. Does he drink milk? They drink milk. Do they drink milk? They drank milk. Now this sentence is in past tense. The question will be, did they drink milk? He had an umbrella. Did he have an umbrella? So, like this, you convert the sentences which are in simple present or simple past tense by using do, did, or does. As we observed in yes-no questions, that we always put the auxiliary verb before the subject. But there is an exception whenever the subject is who, what, which, whose, or what, which, whose along with the noun. In these cases, the position of the verb does not change and the verb is placed after the subject, as in a statement. For example, why are you crying? When did you see him? How do you wear this tie? What was he saying? Which pen have you lost? Who has called you? Which pen is yours? In sentences A to E, an auxiliary verb is placed before the subject. For example, why are you crying? When did you see him? How do you wear this tie? What was he saying? And which pen have you lost? But in sentences F and G, who has called you? Which pen is yours? The subject precedes the verb, like we do in statements, because the question words who or which pen, they are the subjects. So, both of them start with which pen. In sentences E, which pen is the object of the verb. In sentence G, it is the subject. Therefore, in sentence E, the which pen have you lost, the have comes before the subject. In sentence G, which pen is yours, which pen comes before the verb is, because it is the subject in this question. Let us compare the following now. Who as subject. Who made you a monitor? Now we are asking about someone. In this sentence, that means the subject is implied, that who is the subject. So that means someone made you. Who made you? That means who as a subject. Now who as the object? Who did you make the monitor? That means you made someone the monitor. So this is an example of using who as the object. So when in the sentence or when in the question you're asking about someone, that is an example where who is the subject. But when you are asking about someone or you made someone, that means who is the object in this question. Now let us do a small review of the WH or W question patterns. Why? With why, the auxiliary verb are comes first or before the subject. Why are you crying? So that means the auxiliary verb comes before the subject and then you, the subject comes and then the other part of the sentence comes. When did she meet him? Again, with when, we use the auxiliary verb before the subject and then the subject and then the other verbs. What had she thought? Again, had, we use the auxiliary verb before the subject and then the subject and then up the other verb. Who did you email? Similarly, did is an auxiliary verb which will come before the subject you and then after that we will use the other part of the sentence. Now when, who is used as the subject. Who had called you? Which book is yours? What happened? Now in these kinds of sentences where who, which or what, they are used as subjects, we use the verb groups first and then the subjects, like who had called you, which book is yours, and what happened. So this was all about interrogative sentences. Let's do a quick recap before we end this video. The questions are of two types. Yes-no questions, which can answer by only yes or no, and you don't need more information to these questions. For example, is she singing? Has Madhu left? Work questions or WH questions, which begin with who, which, what, whom, whose, when, etc. In yes-no questions, the auxiliary verb is placed before the subject. And in work questions, the verb is placed after the subject, mostly, but we have studied all the exceptions. Thank you so much for staying with us. Stay tuned for our next video lecture.